to Simply Fujica, a place for budding and aspiring entrepreneurs. Guys, I want to welcome you to another week here at the channel. Guys, if you are new to this channel, I do want to welcome you. My name is Fujica and I serve this community as a business mentor. Guys, before we get started in today's content, I do want to remind you that we do have a home care licensing course that is active. Guys, I'm really excited. This is the first time I'm doing something of this magnitude, and so we are enrolling for class now. Class is slated to start Saturday, November 5th, and then it will end on Saturday, December 10th. So this is a 6-week course. Guys, the link will be in the description below, so if you are interested, you want to enroll now because class is limited. Okay guys, with that we're going to get started. Guys, you have heard in a couple of the interviews that we've done with Hawa, and if you haven't seen the second one, I will have it linked at the top and I will include it in the video description. We've talked about documentation, how documentation is key, and if you don't document it, that means it didn't happen. So guys, it's really important for us to have a good handle on documentation. I'm actually considering turning this into a masterclass. That's how important it is. So today I just wanted to give you a quick overview about documentation. I know some of you reach out to me behind the scenes asking me questions about it, including what is some software that's recommended. So if that's something that interests you, then just keep watching. So what is home care documentation? Let's start with defining it. So what is home care documentation? Documentation is the patient's story. This is you giving an account of that patient's progression, any positive outcomes, any measurements taken in the customer's care. In essence, guys, this is your job in writing. So what are you doing? What are those standards of care? What are those activities of daily living that you are doing with this patient? And what are the outcomes of your care? That's the example that I want to use today, and that's the definition I'm using to that. It is really the basis of the reason why you're there caring for that client. So I know that some of you have asked, so what goes into the actual documentation? So I know you guys have heard of some principles. I know you've heard of the 10 principles of care, 10 standards of care. Some of you have heard the 3 principles of good documentation. All of those are good and all of those are fine. However, I read an article on the 6 key attributes of client care documentation, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. First attribute, guys, that we're going to talk about is the accuracy of the record. And really, when you think of this, you want to consider all of the items that you are placing in that customer's medical record, or that client, I should say. And so a lot of that is depending on your interviewing skills, your documentation skills. So how accurately are you documenting what happened that day? How would you know that client's mood, for instance, if you didn't ask it? So of course you can observe it, but did you have any conversation about it? And what were the results of that conversation? That is what needs to be documented. What about that person's overall appearance? Their overall activities that you did for that day? Those are the types of things that you want to make sure, in order for that record to be clear and concise, that you place all of that information in the record, which leads to the second tip. The second tip is the accessibility of the record. So in other words, how quickly is it for anyone to retrieve that documentation record? And a lot of that is going to depend on access, right? Because if you're not using a software, because if you're using a software, then it's just about giving people access to that software, which we will talk about later on in this video. But let's say you're using Microsoft Word. Let's say you're actually writing notes. How are others? Maybe there's a second shift nurse. Maybe you're there overnight and someone relieves you in the morning. How is that person going to have access to your notes if it's not stored in the software? So this is why that second attribute is very important, because you want to make sure everyone who's involved in that client's care has accessibility to that record. The third key point here is the comprehensiveness of the report. So what that really means is you want to make sure that the report is complete, right? You wouldn't want someone to take a look at the report and feel like a page is missing or information is missing, or that you didn't think to include that information. Because again, remember the whole purpose of the document is to paint an accurate picture of the client and their current condition. And so if you're relaying that information to someone, you have to make sure that all of that information is complete in order for it to appear as comprehensive to anyone reading it. The fourth attribute is consistency of information found within the medical record. Now, at first glance, and even when I read this at first, I was like, how important is that? But it actually is. Because one day you don't want to have emphasis on a certain topic and leave important information out. And then the second day, you're talking about something completely different and not even mentioning what happened the previous day. It seems kind of choppy. And then it also leads the reader to think, is anything missing from this? So if you have a consistent format, such as date, topic, caregiver, things of that nature, then everyone can see from how that information flows what a consistent day looks like, what an average day looks like, and then there should be some kind of way where you're reporting outliers, what was different about today, so someone can see that. And even the next person comes in after you, they can take that outlier into consideration. So, you know, if let's say Fujica had a bad fall, okay, that next person coming in, hey, Miss Fujica, I heard you had a bad fall. How are you feeling today? How is that doing today? How's your leg feeling? So see, just things of that nature. So that continuum of care to that client is not interrupted because they have several caretakers. So guys, the fifth attribute we want to discuss here is the timeliness of your documentation. Now guys, a lot of this is going to be cyclical, right? Because a lot of times people will chart different times of their shift, which is fine. The important thing to remember here is you want to make sure that you document at the same time, as much as you can, every day, so that documentation is timely, and so it doesn't seem to be any lapse in your documentation, because sometimes lapse can lead to question marks. So for instance, if you start your shift, when you first come in, you check in with your client, you're seeing how that client's doing, maybe you have a routine of putting that coffee on, you know, maybe you're massaging them when they first come in to see how they're doing. If you're transferring that person to the restroom and you know you have a couple minutes, that's a good time to start your documentation, because it's fresh on your mind. What is that person's, you know, what am I trying to say? What is their
feelings, emotions?
Yeah.
Chain of thought.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So this is perfect timing for you to get in, because, or this is perfect time for you to start documentation, because it is fresh in your mind. How is that person doing? What are their emotions like? You know, what is the goal for today, right? So they're there, you're still taking care of them, but you're making that time to jot down some of those notes. You could do the same thing if you're preparing their meal. As you're preparing their meal, you're putting some documentation. Because what you don't want to do is wait till the end of your shift and be like, okay, let's see what happened today. Because you may leave out key information. Another item or another reason why you want to make sure that your documentation is timely is you don't want you being late with documentation to prevent that client from getting care that was needed. And so the soonest that you find out that a person is in pain, the soonest that you find out that a person may be not up to their regular activities today, because maybe there's something underlying that's going on. By you not diving into that and not documenting it, that can delay that client getting the help to address that situation as needed. The sixth and final tip that we're going to discuss today is the relevancy of the medical records. And so if you are a talkative person like me, sometimes that translates to your writing. And that can work against you, right? Because we really don't need to know that it was a sunny day. We really don't need to know all these details that has nothing to do with that client's care. So you want to make sure that, again, you are following something that's consistent. So there should be some structure to your note. But everything that's in it is really a matter of fact, right? And the reason why is you never know who or why someone will want to see that record outside of that client's care. So hopefully you wouldn't experience this, but if that record is subpoenaed and there could be an attorney looking at that record, you really don't want to come across as anything other than a professional caretaker. So when you write your notes, ask yourself this: is this professional? Is it concise? Is it complete? Right? So those are the types of things you want to ask yourself as you're preparing and completing your document. Guys, the second part of this video is really talking about the software. And honestly, guys, I'm going to go ahead and link in the description a video that I found, because there's so many types of software out there. Again, some people do take notes on a notepad. I've seen people come into our home with taking notes on a notepad. I see sometimes people utilizing OneNote, so this may be something that they are uploading and emailing at a later time. There actually is Homecare software. So again, because I'm linking that information below, I'm only going to go into 2 here. Even though 10 different software versions came up, I only want to discuss the top 2 as it relates to rating and the amount of users that actually took a survey. The reason why that's important is because it really doesn't matter if a person got a 5-star rating, but there's only one person taking the survey, because it could hint to the fact that this software is new. And so depending on where you are in your process and how comfortable you are, you may want a software that is proven, that is well known in the industry, and that's really user friendly. And so with that, you need more reviews to make that type of decision. I love this information that I'm going to share with you, because everyone tells you what it involves. So all of them involve billing and invoicing, care plan management, mobile access, which is huge. If you guys are new to this as an actual owner, you will see a lot of people are making these documentations on their cell phones. So I love that people can go in and do what they need to do on their cell phones. And I think all of them but one offer that mobile access. So see, that might be something that's a consideration for you. That may make that one software ineligible for you in your agency if that's something that you really want. Patient record management, scheduling, and then time tracking by the client. So that's the client certifying that your home health aide was in fact at their house the whole time that they said that they were there. Okay, so again, you get to see what the software offers, and you get to see the ratings. Just from what I can tell, it looks like Access Care is something that is well known and is highly rated. The second item that I'm seeing on here is WellSky Personal Care. Again, it has a lot of ratings, high rated ratings, but they are the one that I was telling you that does not have the mobile access. So again, I will make sure you have access to that link at the bottom of the page. But again, you really just want to make sure that, I love what Hawa said in a previous video, if it's not documented, that means it did not happen. So you really want to make sure that as you are supplying that A+ white glove care that you're providing, that you're making sure that your documentation is an example of that. Okay? So guys, that is all that I have for today's video. Hopefully you found this helpful. If you haven't already, don't forget to like the video. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel. And do not forget to hit that bell notification to notify you every time I release a new video. Okay guys, that's all I have for you today. Stay blessed.